Добрый вечер. В эфире спецпроект «Пограничная зона». Меня зовут Егор Куроптев. Украина. Война идет уже несколько дней. Взрывы и обстрелы по разным городам независимой, суверенной Украины. Сегодня эту тему мы будем обсуждать с заместителем госсекретаря США Викторией Нуланд. Undersecretary Nuland, welcome to the border zone.
Thank you.
President Putin blames the United States for this war, the same as he did in 2008 during the war in Georgia. United States has been actively working and supporting both Georgia and Ukraine all these years. Would you say that this war is between the White House and the Kremlin?
Of course not. This is a brutal, brutal war started by President Putin for his own vanity, for his own aspirations to recreate the Soviet Empire. As you know, the U.S. has supported Georgia and Ukraine since they became independent states, since the Soviet Union broke up, a fact that Mr. Putin has found it hard to live with all of these 30 years. But our goal has been to ensure that both Georgia and Ukraine and all the countries of the former Soviet space can make their own choices about their own future. And Ukraine was making a choice to be increasingly integrated with Europe, to be more free, more open, more prosperous, more secure. And that's what we've been supporting, and that's what President Putin can't stand. He can't stand losing the Kremlin and his own personal grip on Ukraine. He said it himself 2 weeks ago. Ukraine is not an independent country. Well, what are you going to do with somebody with an attitude like that?
You just mentioned supporting Ukraine. President Zelensky stated that Ukraine fights alone for the security and stability of entire Europe. How do you evaluate support provided to Ukraine? Was it enough or was it too late?
Well, as you may know, we've provided this year alone some $625 million in lethal defensive assistance to Ukraine. We've also been speaking to the Ukrainians all these months as we saw the Russian preparations about how to defend themselves, how to protect themselves. That said, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and we've made clear from the beginning that we are not going to become co-combatants in this war. We're not going to be offensively involved in this war with American boots on the ground. That would make it a U.S.-Russian war and a global war. But the Ukrainians are fighting incredibly bravely. You've seen just over the last couple of days some of the very serious losses that the Russians have suffered. Helicopters down, airplanes down, paratroopers captured. Unfortunately, lots of deaths on the Ukrainian side, of course, but also on the Russian side. This is a tragedy created by President Putin. That's what's most important for everybody to understand. A tragedy not just for Ukraine, not just for the world, but for the Russian people too, because they don't want war. We're seeing this in the protests on the streets in Moscow, in the letter from the 100 journalists saying no war. We're seeing this with mothers protesting that their sons are being sent to the front for no reason. And it's the Russian people that will suffer the most as Russia goes into a deep isolation again as a result of President Putin's violent choice.
You mentioned the scale of support, but again, was it enough or was it too late?
Look, I think that all of us hoped, the Ukrainians included, that after multiple efforts to engage Russia in diplomacy and the strong deterrent messaging about sanctions, that we would be able to prevent this war. And we were in the middle of trying to engage Russia again diplomatically. The Ukrainians were. Zelensky wanted a meeting with Putin. We were in offering our answer to Russia's many demands, some which we could talk about and some which were outrageous, obviously. And we were prepared to continue talks, but Putin was not prepared for diplomacy. He wanted this war. And when somebody wants war, when somebody wants to invade another country, there's almost nothing one can do to prevent that. So the question is now to continue to say that this is wrong and to continue to support those Ukrainians who are fighting so bravely, but also those Russians who are standing up to their government and saying no war.
You also mentioned sanctions. Today we can say that sanctions cannot directly stop the war. Then what are the purpose of these sanctions now?
Sanctions did not deter President Putin because he actually doesn't care about his own people and he doesn't care about Russia's future. Unfortunately, what these sanctions will do is to completely isolate Russia from something that it has enjoyed for more than 30 years, which is access to international finance, access to broad and deep trade, access to high technology that comes from the United States and from our allies and partners. So by his actions and by being willing to subject his country to these kinds of sanctions, President Putin is throwing Russia back into isolation and a darker age of less prosperity and ensuring that it cannot benefit from the technological and trade integration with the rest of us. So it's just, as I said, it's tragic for Ukraine, it's tragic for the global order, but it's also very tragic for the Russian people in terms of sacrificing their future for his own imperial ambitions.
But would you agree that President Putin knew that these sanctions will follow, including possible sanctions against him personally? So do you really believe that sanctions packages can stop the war?
Well, again, these are designed to ensure that President Putin personally, the people around him, and unfortunately Russia pay a very, very high cost for the bloody war that Putin has launched. There are some immediate effects. You saw the ruble drop precipitously. You saw the Russian government yesterday have to spend $11 billion of Russia's money to prop up the currency. That's money that ought to go to COVID relief and schools and roads and technology inside Russia, and is instead being spent because he doesn't care about how he spends Russia's money. And so, unfortunately, these sanctions will have some effect now, but they're also going to have a very deep and profound effect in terms of Russia's future over the longer term. And that's what President Putin has done with this war. He's sacrificing the present and the future of his own people for this awful, bloody imperial ambition. And again, we stand with the Ukrainian people, but we also stand with all those brave Russians who are saying no to him. Even some of the sons and daughters of the people closest to Putin have gone on Twitter, have gone on Facebook and said, we oppose this war no matter what our fathers are doing.
And my last question will be from my friends from Ukraine, Kiev, Union, who are under permanent security threat and attack. I will quote. They wonder, you've been actively traveling to Ukraine since 2013, and we remember you visiting Maidan, helped the country to rise, believe, supported it all the way through its challenging periods. But right at the moment when the empire attacked with open intention to invade, you act as if nothing happened. Ukrainians feel abandoned. What will be your reaction?
Again, it is the United States that has provided the bulk of the external defensive weapons that the Ukrainians are now using so bravely to defend themselves. It is the United States that has championed Ukraine's development as a democratic state. It is the United States that warned Ukraine over many months and warned Russia over very many months that this war was coming so that they could make preparations. And again, we stand with the Ukrainian people. My president talked to President Zelensky again this morning, and my secretary talked to Foreign Minister Kuleba, saying the same. But you are right. This is unfortunately a very difficult and dangerous situation for the Ukrainian people. They are being enormously courageous in standing up to the Russian onslaught, and our hearts are breaking for them, and we stand with them tonight and today.
I believe they wait for more. They wait for military involvement of the United States, which will actually stop the war, when they say that they don't see direct support from DC.
Again, it is the javelins that the United States has sent that the Ukrainian military is now using to destroy Russian tanks. It is American Stinger missiles that the Ukrainians are now using to shoot down helicopters and aircraft that are coming in from Russia to bomb Ukraine and to drop Spetsnaz into Kyiv. It is American ammunition that the very strong and brave patriots of Ukraine are using to defend their homeland. It is a tragic and awful situation that I wish had never come to pass, perpetrated by a single man with a bloodthirsty dream of reconstituting an empire. But again, we have done what we have done and will continue to do as much as we can to help Ukraine defend herself.
Undersecretary Нуланд, thanks a lot for your time and for joining the Border Zone project today. I wish peace to Ukraine and also to Georgia, which is under permanent security threat since 2008.
Absolutely. Thank you, Егор.
Это был спецпроект «Пограничная зона». У меня в гостях была замгоссекретаря США Виктория Нуланд. Проект «Пограничная зона» выходит из Грузии на русском языке. Грузия, как и Украина, знает, что такое война и агрессия. Грузия, весь грузинский народ желает мира и поддерживает Украину. Слава Украине! Героям слава!